Name is Marcus. I'm 29 years old, and I'm about to tell you how I watched my family's golden child crash and burn while they begged me to save him. This story is about justice, karma, and the satisfaction of watching years of favoritism finally catch up with everyone involved. I need to start by explaining the family hierarchy that shaped my entire childhood. I'm the middle child of 3 boys. My older brother Trevor is 32, and my younger brother Dylan is 26. But in my family, birth order meant nothing compared to athletic ability, and that's where everything went wrong. Trevor was always the star. From the time he could walk, he was faster, stronger, and more coordinated than other kids his age. Middle school, he was dominating in football, basketball, and track. My parents, Robert and Karen, saw dollar signs and championship trophies in their future. I, on the other hand, was what you might call academically gifted but athletically average. I loved reading, excelled in math and science, and spent my free time building computers and learning programming languages. To my parents, these weren't talents, they were consolation prizes for not being good at real activities. Dylan was somewhere in the middle. He was decent at sports but not exceptional, and while he wasn't as academically inclined as me, he wasn't struggling either. Dylan had one thing going for him, that he worshipped Trevor and was happy to play the role of supportive little brother. The favoritism in our house was so blatant, it was almost comical. Trevor got a new car for his 16th birthday, a brand new Ford Mustang. When I turned 16, I got a used Honda Civic with 150,000 miles on it. When Dylan turned 16, he got Trevor's hand-me-down car because Trevor was getting another upgrade. Trevor's bedroom was in the finished basement, which was basically a luxury apartment with its own bathroom, mini fridge, and entertainment center. Dylan and I shared a bedroom upstairs until I was 17, at which point I moved into what used to be the storage closet. It was barely bigger than a walk-in closet, but at least it was private. Every family dinner conversation revolved around Trevor's latest game, Trevor's statistics, Trevor's scholarship prospects, or Trevor's college recruitment. When I tried to share news about making the honor roll, winning a programming competition, or getting accepted to advanced placement classes, the response was always lukewarm at best. "That's nice, Marcus," my mom would say, "but did you hear that Trevor rushed for 240 yards last night?" My dad was even worse. He would actually interrupt me mid-sentence if Trevor walked into the room. "Hold that thought, Marcus. Trevor, tell us about practice today." The message was clear. Trevor's achievements mattered, mine didn't. The college years were when the disparity really became obvious. Trevor got a full-ride football scholarship to State University, which was a big deal in our small town. The local newspaper did a feature story on him, and my parents threw a massive graduation party to celebrate his scholarship. When I graduated as valedictorian and earned a full academic scholarship to MIT, the response was dramatically different. My dad's exact words were, "Well, at least all that studying paid off for something." No party, no newspaper feature, just a brief mention at Sunday dinner that their middle son was going to some technical school in Massachusetts. Dylan graduated 2 years later with average grades and no scholarship offers. He decided to go to community college and live at home, which my parents praised as being practical and staying close to family. College was the first time I felt truly free from the toxic family dynamics. At MIT, intelligence was valued, creativity was rewarded, and I could finally be around people who appreciated the things I was good at. I thrived academically, made genuine friendships, and started to understand that my family's treatment of me wasn't normal. Meanwhile, Trevor was having the time of his life at State. He was starting quarterback by his sophomore year, dating the homecoming queen, and being treated like royalty on campus. My parents went to every single one of his games, sometimes driving 6 hours each way. They bought season tickets, team merchandise, and planned their entire social calendar around Trevor's football schedule. I invited them to visit me at MIT exactly once during my 4 years there. I came for a weekend, complained about the cold weather and the stuffy atmosphere, and spent most of the time asking when I would transfer somewhere closer to home. They never came back. Dylan bounced around community college for 3 years, changing majors multiple times and eventually dropping out to work at a local auto parts store. Parents supported this decision, saying that college wasn't for everyone and that Dylan was learning valuable life skills in the real world. After college, I landed a software engineering position at a major tech company in Seattle. The starting salary was $95,000, which felt like winning the lottery to a 22-year-old from a working-class family. I was excited to share the news with my parents. $95,000, my mom said over the phone. "That seems like a lot for someone just starting out. Are you sure they're not making a mistake?" My dad was more direct. "Just don't let that money go to your head, son, and make sure you're saving for retirement. Those tech jobs can disappear overnight." Meanwhile, Trevor had been drafted by an NFL team, albeit in the 6th round. His signing bonus was $75,000, and his rookie salary was $480,000. The difference in how my family reacted was night and day. They threw another massive party for Trevor's NFL contract. The whole town was invited, and local businesses donated food and decorations. My dad gave a speech about how proud he was to have raised a professional athlete who made it to the big leagues. When people at the party asked about me, my parents would say things like, "Oh, Marcus got some computer job in Seattle. He's doing fine, but you know how those tech things are here today, gone tomorrow." Trevor's got real security with his football career. This pattern continued for years. Every promotion I received, every raise, every professional milestone was minimized or dismissed. When I bought my first house at 25, my mom said, "I hope you're not overextending yourself financially. Houses are expensive to maintain." And Trevor bought a mansion 2 years later. She posted about it on Facebook for weeks. The irony was that while my career was steadily growing, Trevor's was stagnating. He spent 2 years on the practice squad, getting cut and re-signed multiple times. He eventually made it to the active roster, but was primarily a backup quarterback who rarely saw playing time. The writing was on the wall, but my family refused to see it. They kept talking about Trevor's breakthrough season that was always just around the corner. They made excuses for every setback and blamed coaches, other players, or bad luck for his lack of progress. Meanwhile, I had been promoted 3 times and was now making $180,000 a year as a senior software engineer. I had also started doing freelance consulting work that brought in an additional $40,000 annually. But my success was still treated as less impressive than Trevor's increasingly precarious football career. The beginning of the end came when Trevor was 28. He had been cut from his 3rd NFL team and was facing the reality that his professional football career was probably over. Instead of transitioning to a coaching position, getting into sports broadcasting, or leveraging his football experience in some other way, Trevor made a series of increasingly desperate decisions. He spent his savings trying to start a sports training facility that failed within 6 months. He invested in a restaurant with some former teammates that went bankrupt. He tried to become a sports agent, but couldn't pass the certification exam. Each failure was funded by my parents, who kept believing that Trevor would figure it out. Dylan, meanwhile, had gotten married and had 2 kids while still working at the auto parts store. He and his wife Sarah lived in a small apartment and struggled financially, but they were happy and stable. My parents helped them occasionally with small amounts of money, but nothing compared to what they were pouring into Trevor's failed ventures. I had met someone special during this time. Her name was Rachel, and she was a pediatric nurse who shared my values about hard work, education, and personal responsibility. We got engaged when I was 27, and I was excited to have her meet my family. The meeting was a disaster, but not for the reasons you might expect. My family was actually quite nice to Rachel, but their treatment of me in front of her was embarrassing and revealing. Throughout the entire weekend visit, every conversation somehow circled back to Trevor and his various projects. When Rachel asked about my work, my dad interrupted to tell a story about Trevor's high school football career. When I mentioned a recent promotion, my mom changed the subject to ask if anyone had heard from Trevor lately. When Rachel complimented the house I had bought, my parents spent 20 minutes showing her pictures of Trevor's mansion. On the drive back to the airport, Rachel was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and please don't take this the wrong way. Are you adopted?" I laughed, but she was serious. "I'm not joking. The way your family treats you compared to your brothers is so extreme that I honestly wondered if there was some other explanation. It's like they don't even see you as their son." That conversation was a turning point for me. Having an outsider validate what I had experienced my entire life was both painful and liberating. It confirmed that I wasn't being oversensitive or imagining the favoritism. It was real and obvious to anyone who witnessed it. Rachel and I got married a year later. My parents came to the wedding, but they spent most of the reception talking to other guests about Trevor's latest business venture. During my father's speech, he mentioned Trevor twice and Dylan once, but barely acknowledged me despite it being my wedding day. The final straw came when I was 28 and Trevor was 31. By this point, Trevor had burned through most of his NFL earnings and was living back at home with my parents. He had racked up significant debt trying to fund his various failed businesses, and creditors were starting to call. My parents called me one evening and asked if Rachel and I could come home for a family meeting. They said it was urgent and important, so we flew out the next weekend. The meeting was in the living room with all the family present. My parents, Trevor, Dylan and his wife Sarah, and Rachel and me. My dad did most of the talking. "We need to discuss Trevor's situation," he began. "He's going through a rough patch right now, but we all know he's got the drive and talent to bounce back. The problem is that he needs some capital to get his next venture off the ground." Trevor jumped in with a presentation about his latest idea, a fitness app that would revolutionize personal training. He had charts and projections and a whole business plan. It actually wasn't a terrible idea, but Trevor had no experience in app development, no technical skills, and no understanding of the competitive landscape. The thing is, my mom said, we've helped Trevor as much as we can, and Dylan's got his own family to think about. Marcus, you're doing so well in your computer career, and you don't have kids yet. We were hoping you might be able to help your brother get back on his feet. They were asking me to invest $50,000 in Trevor's app idea. I looked around the room and realized that this was the first time in my adult life that my family had acknowledged my financial success. For years, they had minimized my career and treated my achievements as less important than Trevor's athletic accomplishments. Now, suddenly, they wanted to benefit from the success they had never celebrated. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, I said slowly. You want me to give Trevor $50,000 to start a business in an industry he knows nothing about, despite the fact that he's already failed at multiple businesses and lost all of his NFL earnings. My dad's face got red. Marcus, this isn't about giving. This is about investing in family. Trevor will pay you back once the app takes off. This is a loan, not a gift. Trevor nodded eagerly. Absolutely, Marcus. I'll give you equity in the company, and once we sell it, you'll make way more than your initial investment back. This is a win-win situation. I looked at Rachel, who was sitting quietly beside me. We had discussed this possibility during the flight, and we were both on the same page about how to handle it. I'm not interested, I said simply. The room went silent. Then everyone started talking at once. My mom said I was being selfish and that family should help family. My dad said I was letting jealousy cloud my judgment and that I should want to see my brother succeed. Dylan said I was in the best position to help and that it wasn't fair to expect my parents to keep funding Trevor's ventures. Trevor himself was the most manipulative. He said he had always looked up to me and admired my success, and that he was disappointed that I wouldn't help him when he needed it most. He said that $50,000 was nothing to someone in my position, but it would change his life and get him back on track. I let them all speak, and then I stood up. I need to say something, and I want everyone to listen carefully, I began. For my entire life, this family has treated Trevor like he could do no wrong and treated me like an afterthought. When Trevor succeeded at football, he was celebrated and praised. When I succeeded academically and professionally, I was ignored or told not to let it go to my head. I looked directly at my parents. You went to every single one of Trevor's games in high school and college, but you visited me at MIT exactly once. You threw parties for Trevor's football achievements, but couldn't be bothered to acknowledge when I graduated as valedictorian or got my dream job. I turned to Trevor. You've had every advantage and opportunity handed to you. Full ride scholarship, NFL career, family support at every turn. You've also made terrible financial decisions and failed at multiple businesses because you've never had to face real consequences for your choices. Finally, I addressed the room as a whole. Now that Trevor needs money, suddenly my success matters. Suddenly my career is worth celebrating, but only because you want something from me. Well, here's what I want from you. I want you to acknowledge that you've treated me unfairly for my entire life. I want you to admit that you favored Trevor consistently and that it was wrong. I want genuine apologies, not just words designed to get me to write a check. The room was completely silent for about 30 seconds. My dad exploded. Marcus, you are way out of line. We have always treated all of our sons equally, and I resent the implication that we haven't. Just because we celebrated Trevor's athletic achievements doesn't mean we love you any less. You're letting your emotions cloud your judgment, and you're being incredibly selfish. My mom started crying. How can you say these things about us? We're proud of all our children. We've always supported you in your own way. Just because we're asking for help now doesn't mean we don't appreciate everything you've accomplished. Trevor was angry now too. Marcus, I can't believe you're making this about ancient history. This is about my future and my ability to provide for myself. I thought you were better than this, but apparently success has made you arrogant and cold. Dylan tried to play peacemaker. Come on, guys, this is getting out of hand. Marcus, maybe you don't want to invest in the app, but couldn't you at least help Trevor get back on his feet in some other way? And Trevor, maybe Marcus has a point about some things from when we were kids. But I was done with the conversation. I'm not giving you any money, Trevor. Not for this app, not for any other business venture, and not to get back on your feet. You're 31 years old, and it's time to take responsibility for your own life. I stood up and took Rachel's hand. We're going back to the hotel, and we're flying home tomorrow. When this family is ready to have an honest conversation about how I've been treated, you know how to reach me. But until then, don't contact me asking for money. As we walked toward the door, my dad called after me. Marcus, if you walk out that door, don't expect us to welcome you back. Family is supposed to stick together, and what you're doing is unforgivable. I turned around one last time. Dad, I've been trying to earn your approval and respect my entire life. I'm done trying. If you want a relationship with me, it needs to be based on mutual respect, not on what I can do for Trevor. And we left. The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect. I was bombarded with calls and text messages for weeks. Extended family got involved, with aunts and uncles calling to tell me I was breaking my parents' hearts and destroying the family over pride and stubbornness. Trevor started a social media campaign about his app idea, clearly hoping to raise money from other sources. It failed spectacularly when people started asking pointed questions about his business experience and track record. My parents eventually mortgaged their house to give Trevor another $30,000, which he burned through within 4 months. The app was never completed, and Trevor is now working as a personal trainer at a local gym, making about $35,000 a year. Dylan reached out to me privately about 6 months later. He said he had been thinking a lot about our conversation and that he could see some truth in what I had said about the family dynamics. He said he wanted to maintain a relationship with me separate from the Trevor situation. Dylan and I now have regular phone calls and visit each other occasionally. He's acknowledged that our parents did favor Trevor and that it wasn't fair to me. He's also said that he stayed out of it for years because it benefited him to not be the least successful son, but that he regrets not speaking up for me. My parents and Trevor have never apologized or acknowledged any wrongdoing. According to Dylan, they still tell people that I abandoned the family over money and that I was always jealous of Trevor's success. They've never taken responsibility for the decades of favoritism or recognized how their behavior affected me. It's been 2 years since that family meeting, and I have no regrets about my decision. Rachel and I are happier than ever, and I've been promoted again to a principal engineer position making $220,000 a year. We bought a beautiful house, and we're planning to start a family soon. More importantly, I've finally stopped seeking approval from people who were never going to give it to me fairly. I've built a life surrounded by people who value my contributions and celebrate my achievements genuinely. Trevor is struggling financially and professionally, but those are consequences of his own choices and my parents' enabling behavior. Dylan is doing well and has become the brother I always wished I had. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had given Trevor the money. Would he have succeeded with the app? Would my family have finally respected me? Or would they have just seen it as confirmation that their manipulation worked and continued treating me the same way? I'll never know, but I'm confident I made the right choice. After spending my entire life being treated as less important than my athletic brother, I finally stood up for myself and demanded the respect I deserved. Some people might say I should have helped family regardless of past grievances, but I disagree. Respect and love should be unconditional, but financial support doesn't have to be. My family had 30 years to treat me fairly, and they chose not to. When they finally needed something from me, it was too late to undo decades of damage with empty apologies and promises. The golden child finally fell from grace, and for the first time in my life, I didn't try to catch him. That might sound cold to some people, but to me, it sounds like justice.